Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so glad to see so many faces here today, or so many names now. So we are recording for today, and we are welcoming my friend Chris, our friend Chris. I met her, I would say probably November of last year, and we started in a workout group, and oh my gosh, we have so much fun in our workout groups. It is just, we can't help but dance when we're in our groups. We have a lot of fun. So she is a, oh my gosh, what's your title again, Chris? You're a,
do you want me to give the group a snapshot background?
Sure, that would be awesome.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amanda. So I'm Chris Fraser, as Amanda mentioned. I have been spinal cord injured for 34 years, on wheels for 34 years. I've been a registered dietitian for 30 years. 25 of that, I was the registered dietitian for the spinal cord injury and brain injury rehabilitation programs at Parkwood Institute. Some of you are very familiar with Parkwood, having been there or in programs related. Yep. And I've more recently had the opportunity to get involved in physical activity related projects as well. And we can always share more about that too. But today I am here to talk about nutrition, and specifically to tell you that what's good for the brain is good for the heart, is good for the gut, and is good for all kinds of things. You will be getting this presentation, the slide presentation, afterwards, because there's a lot of information and a lot of food lists that if you tried to take notes, you would miss the presentation. So I want you all to have the presentation at the end to refer back to, because there's a lot of information. We'll wait towards the end for questions, so jot your questions down.
I was just going to say the same thing, Chris. I was just going to say, we'll keep the questions for the end, just in case, you know, we don't want to run over too much time. So we'll keep the flow of things, and then we'll do questions at the end. And yeah, would you like me to share my screen so that we can get started on that then?
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. Please. Thank you, Amanda.
You're very welcome.
Hi, Chris.
All right.
Hey, Phil. Good to see you.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Just finished the workout with Ariel.
Awesome.
Hi, Chris. I'm here too.
I know. Hi, Roberta.
Hi.
Bert's
But
here.
I'm gonna mute because we're getting lunch ready at the same time. So
make it healthy.
Yeah.
well, we are. It's leftovers.
It's McDonald's.
There's the slideshow. All right. So Chris, you just let me know when you want me to go to the next slide, and I will do that for you. Perfect, can everybody Amanda. See it first of all?
Good question.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
So this presentation is entitled Really Important Nutrition Information for Every Body. Now, for those of us who have spinal cord injuries or neurological conditions, something affecting our mobility, sometimes that may impact our bowels or other parts of our bodies, that so some of us may want to focus in on certain areas a little bit more than others. But again, so happy to take your questions at the end, because we're all different. So what might work very well for us from a nutrition or supplement perspective might not be so great for some of the rest of us. Very individual. Next slide, please. So the key topics for today: nutrition for the heart, brain, and gut. Basically, when we're taking care of our hearts, our brains, our guts, our entire bodies are happy. You will see when we talk about the various foods recommended for heart, brain, and gut, there's a lot of overlap in the really beneficial foods. We're going to talk about heart health and dietary fats, brain health, bowel health and bowel management. And towards the end, I've put together what I call your grocery list for health, the best anti-inflammatory and antioxidant foods. So if we don't get to work through each of those shopping lists individually, you'll have the basis to the reasoning that I recommend those foods and to really use them when you go to the grocery store or give your list to somebody who does your groceries for you. Next slide, please. Dietary fats, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I put them in those categories for a reason. Don't worry about the big terms, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. Just be aware of and look back on these slides when you're wanting to choose the best fats. So good fats contribute to heart health and to brain health, and also may decrease depression risk or the intensity of depression if you have depression as a condition. Good fats, olive oil, I would put that right up at the top of the list. Canola oil, oil and walnuts, almonds, flax, and peanuts, including peanut butter. The other good fats, fatty fish, ground flaxseed, going to come back to that in a sec, oil and walnuts, soybeans, safflower, sunflower, canola, and corn oils. I'll expand on those last few oils in a moment. When you see flaxseed, you might say, well, I sprinkle flax seeds on my yogurt in the morning. That's great. And that's great for the bowel, depending on your bowel situation. But in order to get the really healthy fat from a flax seed, it has to be ground. So you can grind them yourself if you want, or you can buy ground flaxseed already. Important to keep in the fridge so that the oil from the flaxseed doesn't go rancid once it's ground. Next slide, please. Omega-3 fats. Some of you may have heard about these. You may take a supplement, but I wanted to talk to you about omega-3 fats because they are an excellent fat and so protective in many ways. They decrease our triglycerides. Triglycerides is just a big long name for a type of fat in our blood that we don't really want to have much of. Omega-3 fats can help to prevent our blood from clotting, decrease our blood pressure, help manage symptoms of irritable and inflammatory bowel disorders, and can help with depression, as I mentioned in the previous slide. Next slide, please. Omega-3 fats, the excellent food sources are salmon, especially wild and canned, mackerel, sardines, and herring. Basically fatty fish. And so the way I describe it is, so omega-3 is a fat. Fatty fish have a lot of fat on them. They're cold water fish, so they have to have fat in them because it's cold way underwater. So they have more fat protecting them, and therefore they carry more omega-3s. But you can say, oh my gosh, I do not like fish. Well, the next sources, best sources are halibut, lobster, shrimp, white canned tuna, trout, and anchovies. And you say, Chris, I don't like fish. I just told you I don't like fish. So the next best sources of omega-3s are soy and canola oils, flaxseed oil. So again, grinding your flaxseed to liberate that oil out of the seed, walnuts and other nuts, chia, and pumpkin seeds. Next slide, please. Just one thing I just want to mention that the non-fish sources of omega-3, you have to eat kind of a lot of them to get as much as you would get, say, in a piece of salmon or something. So there's quite a few non-fish sources of omega-3s within your foods. So incorporate them into your diet as much as as often as you can. Having said that, one of the key take-home messages for today is that if and when, and hopefully if you feel that you need to make some dietary changes or nutrition changes, don't try to change everything all at once. First of all, that can be discouraging, because if you say, okay, I'm going to put into place everything Chris recommended today, well, that's not realistic. Choose a goal. For instance, trying a new kind of vegetable. You might just be a corn and potato person, and you want to start incorporating vegetables into your diet. Choose one new vegetable you're going to try and give yourself a week to achieve that goal. Then choose another goal. So you're always working towards improving your nutrition status. So back to omega-3s. This is super important because sometimes people will think, well, you know, I kind of don't like nutritious foods. and I really don't like vegetables. So if I just take a whole bunch of supplements, then I'll be fine, right? Well, not right. And we will be addressing that as we go. Because what might be needed by some person and really helpful and not problematic could be very, very dangerous for somebody else, depending on the situation. So an example of that is omega-3s. So yep, we know that they're super good for our bodies, best to get through food sources. Are you considering supplementing? Well, if you are, I'd like to talk to your doctor or your pharmacist. Pharmacists have the list of your medications as well and can see if there could be any interactions that we don't want. So don't start taking supplements without talking to your doctor or pharmacist. They're a great resource. Supplementation with omega-3s can result in bleeding if you're on blood thinners. So there are Coumadin is a blood thinner that people are on that can interact in ways that you don't want to interact with omega-3s. There's new generation blood thinners now. Even if you're on aspirin on a regular basis as recommended by your doctor, you want to be very careful because omega-3s also acts as a blood thinner. Large amounts of omega-3s from supplements can also result in unusual bleeding in people not on blood thinners. So I am not saying don't take it. I am saying that if you think it's appropriate for you, and if you've incorporated food sources of omega-3s as much as you can into your diet, have that conversation with your doctor or pharmacist, and that might be something you want to start. Next slide, please. Dietary fats, the bad fats. So bad fats can have really negative impact on the brain and the heart, increase inflammation and increase risk for depression. And not only depression, but also feelings of aggression, irritability. I think I do have a slide coming up on this, but I will mention in the event that I don't, that there's been a lot of studies about the Western diet, like the North American, Canadian, American diets typically that are fast food and processed compared to other ways of eating. And all of these studies show that depression, irritability, aggression, ability to concentrate is far, far worse in people who eat the Western diet, the North American diet, the fast food processed diet. So the things we're going to be talking about today are ways to start incorporating these antioxidant, anti-inflammatory foods, healthier foods into your diet over time, and as you feel that you're able to make those changes. So saturated fats are, so the bad fats are generally saturated. Animal sources such as meat, poultry, lard, butter fat, dairy products that aren't low fat or fat free, and plant sources known as tropical oils such as coconut oil, palm kernel oil, and palm oil are also saturated. They're hard at room temperature. And you've maybe heard a lot of benefits about coconut oil. There are some aspects of coconut oil that are different from other saturated fats, but I have never seen a study that has said that it does not put risk to the heart. So my recommendation right now is to keep your fats, and actually next slide, please, Amanda. I think it'll sum this up. Oh, not quite yet, but sticking to the liquid fats. I guess what I'm trying to say is the healthy or healthier fats are liquid at room temperature. The more saturated fats that aren't so great for our brains, our guts, and our heart are hard at room temperature. That is not to say that what we do, we can do everything in moderation. Absolutely. I'm not on a vegetarian or a non-meat diet, but I really try to incorporate as much plant-based products as possible. So as long as how you modify your diet or how your diet is now, if you like the way it is, just making sure it's very well balanced. So ugly fats, why do I call them ugly fats? These are the trans fats. And there's a little bit of trans fat naturally in natural non-processed foods. Those aren't the ones we're concerned about. The trans fats are literally man-made fats. So over the decades, manufacturers and people have said, I want food fast and I want a long shelf life and I want it to be convenient. So in order to make that happen, a certain chemical process had to happen to the good liquid fats to make them hard at room temperature, like margarines as an example. And they're in a lot of processed foods. So trans fats are found in that list of foods that you see there, and you go, oh, bummer, because I love fries. I love fries. But in moderation and being aware that they contain these fats that are worse for our health, our heart health, than the saturated fats on our previous slide. And there is no safe level of consumption. Like the government will say, okay, people can safely eat this amount of this and this amount of this. Well, there's actually no documented safe level for trans fats. So I'm a big label reader when I go to the grocery store. If you guys are great online, or talk to somebody who can take a look at labels for you, because trans fats are listed on the food labels of products. So if you want to get crackers for cheese and crackers for a get together you're having, you can maybe just compare the trans fat level in the different crackers you're looking at and make a choice that way, just as an example. Next slide, please. So omega-6 fats. So in as much as they come in, omega-6 comes from things like the corn oil, sunflower oil, safflower oils, etc., that did fall under the good fat category, and they do. In our food supply these days, we get so much omega-6 fats. It's in products and everything. So for those of you who do take supplements or are considering taking supplements after talking to your doctor, sometimes, you know, if you're scanning the supplement shelf, you might see a bottle that says omega 369. I have no idea why they provide a bottle of 369s, because we can get 6s in our diet without even trying. Also, omega 6s can be what we call inflammatory. So you might say, well, I don't have a swollen ankle or a swollen wrist. What do you mean inflammatory? There are certain things that circulate, lots of things that circulate in our body and our bloodstream. And certain things that we eat, certain things that we do can increase these circulating things that we call inflammatory substances. And that's not a good thing, because these inflammatory substances down the road can produce heart disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, diabetes, lots of things like that. And as well as pain. So where inflammatory markers or substances go up, other things in our body go up that can cause pain. So for those of us with neuromuscular conditions, we may have chronic pain all the time, some more than others. And for those who have it, we know how challenging it can be. So diet can be absolutely key to helping to moderate that chronic pain. So what you don't want to supplement with omega-6s. Look at the food list that you've seen so far and will be seeing in a few minutes, or when you get my presentation, and really try to increase your omega-3s as well as omega-9s. There we go, omega-3, 6, 9, 85. What the heck are you talking about? It's all about the food choices, which is why I'm giving you the food list to choose from. So you don't have to worry about the biochemistry of your nutrition. But adding in things like olive and olive oil, almonds, avocado, adding those things into the diet with the other sources of omega-3s, potential supplementation, is all going to help with your body's inflammatory situation as well as your chronic pain. Next slide, please. So rules of thumb. Good fats, this is a review because I just said this. Good fats are liquid at room temperature. Bad fats are hard at room temperature. So that really is a good rule of thumb. Next slide, please. Other heart healthy foods. So, you know, as a dietitian for decades, sometimes people cringe, like when I was working at Parkwood Institute, you know, hi, I'm your dietitian. Oh no. So people are usually expecting me to tell them what they have to, or what I suggest. they cut back on or remove from their diets, when in fact, there's all kinds of things we can add to our nutrition plan that contribute to heart, brain, bowel health as well. So other things, soluble fiber, again, don't worry about the terms, just look at the food list. Oatmeal, oat bran, psyllium that can be found in Metamucil, but a little bit of chat about Metamucil down the road. Flaxseed, lentils, legumes. So legumes are like beans and tomato sauce, white beans, navy beans, chickpeas, or if you're a hummus lover, you know hummus is made out of chickpeas, very heart healthy for sure. Garbanzo beans, I think that's another name for chickpeas, mung beans, lentils, things like that, very, very heart healthy. Barley, apples, strawberries, pears, citrus fruits, other fruits and vegetables. And plant sterols or phytosterols, again, don't worry about those terms. Vegetable oils, nuts, and the oils from nuts and seeds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, and legumes, especially soybeans. You're going to see legumes pop up a lot. They do a lot of good things in our body. But depending on your bowel management, when we're going to talk more about bowels, it's an important point to note. So we'll just hold on that for a moment. And then things like tomato products, red and orange vegetables, watermelon, pink grapefruit, and guava. And there's this really amazing researcher, nutrition researcher, who does research into a lot of this specifically to inflammation. And she shared with our group one time that cooked tomato products, which can actually include ketchup, not that you want to get your cooked tomato product from ketchup, important for men in the group or people who know men in their lives, can be really protective against prostate cancer. So little tidbit of information there. Next slide, please. Other heart healthy foods, holy moly. See, these are all things we can add to our diets, not remove from our diets. Green and black teas, onions, broccoli, food sources of B vitamins, green leafy vegetables, fruits, legumes, there's legumes again, lentils, nuts, wheat germs, soy flour, whole grains, fortified breads and cereals, lean animal sources. Soy milk, tofu, soy flour, roasted soy nuts. A little aside, and I am not a breast cancer expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I would talk to your doctor about this if you're going to try to increase soy products into your diet. But if you have a history of breast cancer or a family history, have that conversation with your doctor, because there's certain types of breast cancer that kind of biochemically look like soy molecules, kind of. That's not a good explanation. But there are so many other nutritious foods you can do, you can take in to help with your heart other than soy. So I just wanted you to be aware of that before you start going out and buying a bunch of soy products. Incorporating more meatless meals into your diet, and also incorporating aspects of the Mediterranean or the Mind diets. And we're going to talk about that next. Next slide, please. So these are what I call our brain boosting eating patterns. The Mediterranean diet, that some of you may have heard that term or are familiar with it. The Mind diet is less familiar, but very similar to the Mediterranean diet. So if you just take a look at the foods on your slide, what we consider brain busters and brain boosters. Yeah, we got our chips, we got our Big Mac, our fries on the one side, and we've got some of the healthier foods on the other side. You can have both. It's all about balance. Next slide, please. So the key components of the Mediterranean diet every day includes vegetables, fruits, whole grains, olive oil, legumes, nuts, seeds, low-fat dairy, herbs, and spices. So if you're thinking, I only eat a vegetable about once a week, then maybe that will be your first goal, should you choose to make modifications after learning today. Also includes fish and seafood at least 2 times per week. But for those who absolutely do not like fish, you know, then just incorporate other aspects of the Mediterranean diet into your diet changes. Poultry and eggs a few times per week. Red meat no more than a few times per month. Lean, small portions. So usually a portion of meat, because you know, you can go out to a restaurant and sit down to a piece of meat that takes up your whole plate. A typical portion of meat cooked is about the size of your palm. So, you know, you might start out with a chicken breast this big, and then you put it into the oven. And once it's cooked, if it's about the size of the palm of your hand, that's about a portion of meat. Incorporate meatless meals into your week at times and sweets occasionally, because, you know, we've just talked about inflammation. Sugar is highly inflammatory. So candies, cakes, and pastries, and white sugar in your coffee or your tea, basically the white things, the white highly processed flours, don't contain anything of any good other than calories to our bodies. And the white processed sugars, highly inflammatory. Again, it's not going to make your ankle puff up, but it's going to circulate things in your body that can either make a condition that you're currently dealing with now worse, or can increase your risk for things, as I mentioned, dementia, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, arthritis. Anytime there's an ITIS after something itis, that means inflammation. Next slide, please. And this is just sort of a pictorial version of the Mediterranean diet. It's in a food pyramid that we may be familiar with. So being, you know, the foundation, the scaffolding, you know, just basically trying to make good choices, being as physically active as you can within your ability or disability range. If you're interested in pursuing physical activity, there's a ton of people on this call that can guide you, and some really cool programs that are out there specifically for people with disabilities, whether you use a wheelchair or not. And then, as you can see, the larger parts of the pyramid, then they go up to small things that we want to eat a little less often. Next slide, please. The MIND diet. It stands for, and no, don't memorize this, the Mediterranean Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay diet. So what's cool about this, and you know, nutrition and foods we eat is really, really personal. And some of us eat because we're bored. Some of us eat for comfort. Some of us eat when we're stressed out. Some of us eat to relax when we're watching Netflix. So sometimes, depending on where our diets are sitting right now, the thought of making any modification can be really daunting. And that might not be one of your goals right now. But why I wanted to share about the MIND diet is that, well, first of all, the benefits. It's shown to reduce the likelihood of developing Alzheimer's disease by 53% of people who follow the diet rigorously. But wait, there's more. For those of you who are not sure if you can make big changes, 35% in those who adhered to it only modestly. So basically, they're saying, and research has shown, that even making moderate, modest, healthy changes to your diet by following some of these recommendations is going to help somehow. So doing nothing is an option. I would suggest doing nothing, maybe not, you know, not to choose that, but it is a process. But just know whatever you choose in the right direction is going to make some benefit for sure. Next slide, please. So what do? We replace the bad fats in our diets with the good fats as much as possible and at our own time when we feel we're ready. Consume other heart-healthy foods daily. And there were 2 or 3 slides of other heart-healthy foods, and there'll be more. Attempt to maintain a healthy body weight. Increase physical activity within your personal limitations and with the okay of your doctor or your physiotherapist. Somebody knows your situation. And ask your daughter to do a blood test at least yearly. I am really big on knowing your numbers, whether it's yearly blood work or more often, depending on your situation, super important. So for the heart health category, I recommend that people get like what I call a full lipid profile: total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, triglycerides, a ratio between a couple, plus checking your blood pressure and your blood sugars. We're not talking about blood sugars today, but having a fasting blood glucose done and another, at least a fasting blood glucose when you have your yearly blood work done, in addition to your lipids, super important, plus some other things. Next slide, please. Food and nutrition for brain health and function. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies in the brain. And if they're in the brain, they're going to be in the body too. And we've touched on this. Altered cognition. What does that mean? Just not as much clarity in your thinking. And that could be memory, and that could just be your thinking abilities in general. Confusion, disorientation, memory deficit, anxiety, paranoia, restlessness, insomnia, headaches, depression and mood disorders, vision impairment, and other consequences. So we probably weren't really that aware of how much our nutrition affects every aspect of our brains. So I just wanted to share that. Next slide, please. Foods can, depending on what we choose, increase or decrease our risk for depression, negative mental health states, depending on our choices. Increase or decrease the intensity of depression for those who live with it. Increase or decrease irritability, aggressive behavior, feelings of anger, again, depending on our choices. Next slide. Yes, I did include this slide. So I won't take up a lot of time because we already talked about the Western diet and its impact. But again, red meats, processed meats, sausages, and any real processing things, bologna, stuff like that, not good for our brains, hearts, and guts for a number of reasons. High fat dairy products, trans fats, those are the ugly fats we talked about. Processed grains, so like white bread and white bagels and white anything. We talked about the white flour products. Sweets and desserts, pop and fast food, and trying to incorporate more of the good foods on our list, replacing them with those ones that might not be so healthy for us. Next slide. Bowel management. So this is a really important topic for many of the people on the call today, myself included, because as I mentioned, I have a spinal cord injury. My level of injury is T7, so about bra strap down. And generally speaking, if a neurological condition impacts your body below your level of injury, or maybe you had an illness or a condition that you were born with that affects your gut area, your digestive area, we have to be super aware of what we're eating, how those foods are going to affect our bowel and our bowel management. Some people have to do a bowel care program, and depending on your level of injury or condition, depending on the form of your stool, how fast things move through your system, bowel care programs can be different for individual people. And when I was at Parkwood in the rehab program, I spent so much time with people working on their bowel care programs, because it means, you know, independence and not being fearful of things not going so well sometimes with our bowels. So challenges with bowel management are related to the neurological changes to our gastrointestinal tract, our gut, our digestive system, lack of voluntary control. Do you know when your bowels need to move? Can you feel if your bowel is full, for example? And can you control your sphincters, basically, consciously? Your diet and lifestyle choices. Inadequate hydration can hugely contribute to constipation. And some medications, very specific medications based on your situation, may sometimes be needed and helpful. Next slide. So dietary fiber. Fiber is a part of the plant that can't be digested or absorbed by the body. It's not found in animal products. It's only found in plant products. It goes through our system. It doesn't get absorbed into our bodies, but it can work magic or havoc within our digestive systems, depending on our situation, depending on the foods that we're choosing, and how much of those foods that we're choosing. So it's really, really important that we know the effects of what we're eating. So not all fiber is created equal, and we're going to talk about that. Be mindful of the frequency of your bowel movements. Do you want to go more often, or do your bowels move too frequently and you want some tips to maybe slow that down? And be aware of the form and consistency of your stool. Are you straining with hard rabbit pellets, or are your stools so soft and mushy that having a bowel movement is hard, even though your stools are soft and mushy? And I talk like this, like talk about bowels and stool form, because I've just done it like for so many decades. So I hope it's not making you uncomfortable. I hope it's going to help. People think I'm weird though, that I can talk about this stuff so easily. Anyways, next slide. Insoluble fiber. So there's two main types of fiber, insoluble and soluble. So remember, not all fiber is created equal. Insoluble fiber absorbs water into the digestive system and gives form or bulk to the stool. And it speeds the passage of food through your stomach and or intestines. Doesn't mean it's going to cause diarrhea. So when I say speeds things through, if your bowels move once a week or once every 4 days or whatever, and you feel uncomfortable and bloated during that time, you think, you know, I'm going to see what I can do with my diet just to see if I can have a bowel movement a little bit more frequently. That's what I mean by speeds the passage of things through your bowel. If you want to get more form to your stool, this is the type of fiber that you want to incorporate slowly into your diet to give a nice form stool. Because when our digestive muscles start to move, and even if we have our paralysis, the smooth muscle within our bowel starts to pulsate. It's called peristalsis, and it moves things down. If your stools don't have a lot of form to it, we'll get that muscle movement going inside of our digestive system, but it doesn't have enough form to really bring things down. So incorporating some insoluble fiber sources will help with that. It's not dissolved in water. And with any type of increase of fiber in your diet, important to drink optimal fluids with an increase in fiber in general, especially with insoluble fiber, because if you're starting to incorporate more of the insoluble fiber sources, which I'm going to show you the main foods in a second, and you're not increasing your water, it's going to make things worse. You're going to get like plaster of Paris in there, like it's just going to be so super hard. So you want to add the fluid in with these foods, which are on the next slide. So the main food sources include whole grain wheat. So when I think insoluble fiber, I think wheat. if you have a gluten intolerance or celiac disease, obviously you don't want to incorporate any foods with gluten in it. But in general, insoluble fiber, think wheat. Wheat and wheat bran, rye, pumpernickel, corn bran, other grains, brown rice pasta, plums, strawberries, and I don't have to read the whole list for you. And again, you'll be receiving all of these slides right to your front door or your computer. Next slide, please. Soluble fiber. This is the other type of fiber. It is dissolved in water and forms a jelly-like substance in the digestive system, and it slows down stomach and gut emptying and digestion. So if you struggle with the frequency with which you have a bowel movement, meaning you don't go very often, you might not want to load your diet up with soluble fiber sources. If you have diarrhea, this is a good type of fiber to incorporate slowly because it does absorb water. And with diarrhea, we've all been there. It can be uncontrollable and completely watery and no form. So as long you don't want to, if you have ongoing diarrhea, you want to see your doctor because that's not normal and you want to make sure that there's nothing serious going on. Having said that, if you have a bout of diarrhea that's not reflective of anything serious and you want to get a little bit more form into your stool in order to slow down the rate at which that stool is coming through you until you can get form back to your stool again, incorporate some soluble fiber because it literally absorbs the water. So you will get something with form and it will slow down that diarrhea. It's a natural stool softener. So if you struggle with a hard stool, incorporate more soluble fiber sources into your diet, which we're going to see. It can help lower cholesterol and reduce blood sugar, which is a nice bonus. This type of fiber especially can produce gas, bloating, and cramps if you start eating a whole bunch of it. Like I have to be careful with chili with a bunch of kidney beans in it because the kidney beans are going to cause exactly this in me. I love beans and tomato sauce as a side dish sometimes with a salad, but I have to be really careful about how much I eat of that. They're considered legumes, very high in soluble fiber. Some people can eat them till the cows come home. Other people have to be more careful. So everything, just be really conservative as you're making changes to your diet. Next slide, please. So these are kind of the main food sources or groups of foods that contain soluble fiber. That's a natural stool softener. So oats. So when I think insoluble fiber, I think wheat bran. Soluble fiber, I think oat bran, oatmeal, barley, apples, pears, prunes and raisins, flaxseed, the ground again, the legumes. That's where we get our our brown or baked beans, the kidney beans, white beans, navy beans, lima beans, soybeans, chickpeas, hummus, split peas and lentils. Those are the legumes that I've been talking about since we started. Fruits of the citrus family and psyllium. Next slide, please. So bowel management and bowel health. Probiotics. So we may hear pre and probiotics tossed around, and some of you may be on a probiotic supplement for general gut health, or if you have some irritable bowel or something like that. So probiotics are the live, I don't say bugs, but the live bacteria, healthy live bacteria that we can supplement and that are also found naturally in some foods like some yogurts and things. They compete with the bad bacteria in the gut that can cause problems and hopefully run the bad guys out of town and repopulate your gut with the good bacteria that does very beneficial things. Prebiotics feed the good bacteria. And if you have a diet that has a lot of plant-based sources, your fruits and your vegetables and your whole grains, you're automatically going to be getting prebiotics that feed the good bacteria in your gut that does really good things. And here are some examples of prebiotics. Fermented foods, really great for the gut, such as sauerkraut, kefir, kimchi, kombucha, and miso. There are other fermented foods as well, but fermented foods really great for the gut. I always have a jar of sauerkraut in my fridge. Some people can't stand sauerkraut. I love it. Always have a jar in my fridge, A, because I like it, and B, it's a fermented food, and I try to incorporate fermented foods into my diet. Omega-3 fats, I've talked a lot about that. Brain, heart, and now gut health. Physical activity within your personal limitations, with the okay of your doctor or physiotherapist. Physical activity can be really, really key at helping with constipation. You're moving your body more, things are moving and shaken. Can be very gentle fitness, but it can really help. And abdominal massage. So sometimes when I'm lying in bed at night, I'll start just kind of under, you know, that knob at the top of your rib cage, sort of under that. You don't want to press on that. And then just going, so I'm going, starting at the middle, and I'm going left and down, kind of down around your pubic bone, and just massaging your abdomen just gently, and that can help move things along as well. Can be really helpful. Next slide, please. Limiting high fat foods. Now, when you choose fats, we need fats for health and for life and for function. We need fats. What we know from a few minutes ago is that some fats are better choices than others. In general, a high fat meal or a high fat food is going to slow your digestive system down, because fat's the last to leave your stomach. So if your struggle is a very sluggish digestive system, then really try to moderate the amount of fat in your diet and in an individual meal, for example. Hydration, hydration, hydration. We need it for the brain, we need it for the heart, we need it for the bowel, we need it for our urinary tracts, we need it for everything, for life. We can go for a long time without food, we can go for a very short time without hydration, and water is always the best for sure. And depending on your situation, there's many bowel medications out there. You want to make an informed decision if you're choosing medications, or if you think that medications you're on for your bowel now aren't appropriate, because they do very specific things in the gut. And what might be super helpful for one person might be a nightmare for somebody else when it comes to bowel management. So just like fiber, not all fiber is created equal. Not all bowel medications are created equal. Absolutely. Next slide, please. So what do we do?
Chris, I just wanted to interrupt you really quick. We've got just under 10 minutes left.
Oh,
So I just wanted to let you know that. Okay.
thank you, Amanda. And I think we're getting to the end of the main slides, and then we'll just open it up to questions, because the food list that I want everybody to have, they'll be receiving anyway. Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome.
So kind of to sum up this section, dietary fiber, part of the plant that can't be digested. We've talked about that. We want to eat the right combination of soluble and insoluble fiber. Don't want to eliminate one or another, but depending on what's going on in your body, you might want to go a little bit more soluble than insoluble, or the other way around. Be very mindful about what's going on with your bowels and your stool form. Increase fiber intake slowly to prevent gas, bloating, and cramps, and increase extra hydration with fiber. Next slide. Super important. And I'm not going to talk a lot about supplementation, but if some is good, more is not necessarily better and may cause harm depending on your situation. Attempt to get your nutrition from whole foods. Talk to your doctor, your dietitian, your pharmacist before self-supplementing vitamins, minerals, and that goes for natural, like herbal supplements as well, because Yes, they're natural. All of our medications at some point in time came from plants, and they all have impacts on our body one way or another. So if you want to supplement vitamins, minerals, herbs, things like that, make an informed decision and talk to somebody who knows about them. And key take-home message: you can't eat a terrible diet and take supplements and think that your wellness will be okay. And I think the next slide. Yeah, so the next food list I just call your grocery list for health. As I mentioned at the beginning, I've listed foods in the various food groups that are the best antioxidant, anti-inflammatory foods. So use those as a guide when you're making up your grocery list. Slowly incorporate some of those ideas into your diets if you feel that that's something that you would like to do. And just a quick caveat about anti-inflammatory diets. There are some, and at least a couple of people in the group today have been participants in an anti-inflammatory diet study. And it's a very, 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 very strict diet. People get good results with it in terms of their blood work changes in terms of their chronic pain, but it makes it very difficult to adhere to. And it relies a lot on supplements, at least the first phase of the study did. So the foods that I have put together are anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, but that will allow you to eat like a human being in this world and still get the benefits of those foods. Open it up for questions.
Awesome. Okay, do you want me to stop sharing my screen then? Is that okay, Chris?
Sure, that's great.
Sorry.
Okay.
Chris, do you actually have a list? I'm just thinking, I actually booked us till 3:30,
Oh.
just because I had a feeling we were gonna run late. So I didn't book anything else right at 3. And I know just for accessibility purposes, there are some folks who might not be able to read the PowerPoint that goes to them. So I would love it even if you could just highlight like a few of sort of your favorites from each of the slides. I think that might be good.
Awesome. That's a great idea, Sherry.
Okay.
Thank you for that. So your grocery list for health, first food group we're talking about is fruits. So if somebody said that I'm going to a desert island and I was only able to take one category of fruit for antioxidants and anti-inflammation, it would be berries. Berries, 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 with blueberries being at the top of the list. Does not have to be fresh or in season, because we all have a food budget, especially now. And also a lot of foods will rot in our crispers. So I rely a lot on frozen fruits and vegetables, and I always have a bag of frozen blueberries in my freezer that I'll have for breakfast or mix into yogurt or with cereal or whatever. So berries, berries, berries. And then apples, especially red delicious. Oranges, lemons and limes, especially lime zest. If you're a baker or you have somebody in your household or a friend who can bake, who can do that zest thing. Grapefruit, kiwi, guava, mango, plums, pomegranate, prunes, bananas.
What do you mean they're here?
Phil, can you just pop
Got 'em.
yourself? Thank you.
Got them.
Thank you. Bananas, cantaloupe, peaches, apricots. So, and there's other really good fruits out there as well. These are the biggies, with blueberries being at the top of the list. Next slide, please. On to veggies. So anti-inflammatory, antioxidant vegetables, key ones, onions, olives. So now you're getting the heart health benefit as well. Well, all of these heart healthy. Olives, sweet potato, carrots, pumpkin, tomato, leafy greens. Examples I gave: spinach, kale, collard, but romaine, radicchio, when you get like the spring mixes, those are really good leafy greens as well. Asparagus, peppers, especially red and orange. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, mushrooms, especially shiitake, button, oyster, and honey brown mushrooms. Beets, their roots and their greens. Avocado, squash, yams, rhubarb, leeks, celery, and kohlrabi. Those are really good ones. with leafy greens, I would say leafy greens would be at the top of the list because we can incorporate them in so many ways and they're magical, truly. Next slide.
Oh. There we go. Sorry about that.
No problem. Nuts and seeds. Oh, nuts and seeds. Might remember back to when we were talking about the Mediterranean diet. Nuts and seeds are incorporated every day and does not have to be big portions. Like a portion of almonds is like 10 to 15 almonds, just to give you an example. It's not like a big can of Planters peanuts or something like that. Little amounts on a regular basis is the key. So nuts and seeds, walnuts, super, super valuable, nutritious. Flax seeds, ground flax seeds, almonds, hazelnuts, Brazil nuts, peanuts, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, sunflower seeds, peanuts in the shell, eating the skin, not the shell, but you know when you shell a peanut and then there's kind of that the brown sort of thing around it, eat that. Amaranth, which is a type of grain and it's gluten-free, and the butters of the different nuts and seeds as well. Legumes, talk so much about legumes, the chickpeas, hummus, soybeans, tofu, edamame beans. Just remember that little caveat about breast cancer, chat with your doctor. Lentils, white beans, beans and tomato sauce, navy beans, black beans, split peas, black-eyed peas, mung beans, they kind of look like green peas. And peanuts are actually legumes. I will mention as well, just in the interest of time, if we don't quite get there, after our grocery list slides, I've put together slides called Healthy Eating on a Budget. Because I mean, it's important always, especially right now. And there are some money saving tips and tricks within each of the food groups, which will help our pocketbooks. So just want to mention that that is included. Next slide, please. The grains. So as non-processed as possible. So you can look at, say you're in the bread section, or somebody who shops for you is in the bread section, and you want bread. Preferably you're not going to choose white bread for the reasons we've talked about. So you can say, well, what about whole wheat bread? Well, whole wheat bread is better than white bread, but where you want to really zero in is the whole grain. So anything that's as close as it was when it came from the farmer's field, the better. So by the time wheat, just using that as the grain, becomes a piece of bread, a whole lot has happened. But if you can get a piece of bread where the grains are still whole, and like you open up a loaf of bread and, oh, there might be an actual whole sunflower seed in that piece of bread, that means that it's been processed less than something that is just white or beige or something. So whole grain is really important. Whole grain, cracked wheat, ancient grains, brown, white, basmati rice, whole oats, steel cut oats. Steel cut oats would be the top of the oat choice. Rye and pumpernickel, both of those types of breads are actually really good for people who are trying to manage their blood sugars, but want a piece of bread. Rye and pumpernickel have what we call a lower glycemic index. So they don't spike blood sugars like, say, other types of bread would. Barley, buckwheat, and coarse cornmeal. Grain products and bread products, I mentioned about the whole grain. When choosing pasta, try to choose whole wheat pasta. There's lentil pasta out there. And try to avoid products made with white flour. Next slide, please. Protein. So this talks about animal sources of protein and non-animal sources of protein, and all are good sources of protein. You want to make sure you're getting enough protein that your body needs, but you also want to make the right choices. So fish and seafood, poultry with the skin removed. The vast majority of the saturated fat in cholesterol in poultry is in the skin. Other lean meats, eaten it. So as we know from the Mediterranean diet, red meat maybe just once a month. If you have it more often, or a pork chop, or say a ham, cut off the visible fat and discard that. And there's ways of draining fat when we cook. So when we fry, the meat or the food stays in the fat. If we want to drain as much of the bad fats away as possible, we can broil. So in a broiler pan with a rack, so that the fat drains away. Baking, or if you do say stir fry, or if you do fry, hopefully using one of the healthier oils, drain away a lot of the excess fat. That will help to decrease your total fat content. Omega-3 eggs, egg whites, low fat or fat-free yogurt, low fat skim milk, and low fat cheeses and legumes. And, you know, I should have actually had on here nuts and seeds as well. So in an animal product free diet, it makes it a little bit more challenging to get all of the protein that you need. So you really want to try to incorporate as many foods that contain protein. Legumes, super high in protein, nuts and seeds, whole grains, and all of those things should come together to help to meet your protein requirements, especially for those who don't eat animal sources of protein. Yes.
Chris, I just wanted to add something. So I'm vegetarian and I struggle often with protein, and protein powder sometimes makes me feel yucky, like it doesn't sit good in my tummy. So one thing that I've found and I've incorporated is tempeh, and I eat it like quite often. So it's delicious. You could get all different types and flavors, and then you just like pop it in a pan. It takes like 4 minutes to cook. So it's super simple. And it's a nice topper on like a salad or something. So if you're not doing chicken or fish or meat, then you can, tempeh is a great option, just so everyone knows.
Awesome, Sherry. Thank you so much. And I actually did just start incorporating tempeh into my diet as well. Trying to, not that I have a lot of meat in my diet, but trying to get more plant-based things into my diet. And I did exactly that. I purchased it, and I think it was already, it had a flavor to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just put some olive oil into a pan, did it in the olive oil pan, or did it in the pan. And I like hot sauce, so I had a little bit of Frank's Red Hot on the side. But yes, and it's an excellent source of protein, and it's really, really versatile.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sherry, for that. And also for everybody, in the question section, you don't have to ask a question. You can share your tips and tricks, because that's what we're here for, to learn from each other for sure. So herbs and spices: oregano, cinnamon, cloves, turmeric, curry, garlic, onion, mustard, ginger, herbs and spices in general. And if I had to put the number one on this list, it would be turmeric. It's very, very, very well known for its anti-inflammatory properties. And then other brain healthy items for your grocery cart: green tea, black tea, English breakfast tea, oolong tea, which just is a tea that comes from a different plant than other teas, but it does contain caffeine. Cocoa bean is a red berry. Yes, it is. Coffee bean, it's a red berry too, until it's roasted. And dark chocolate. So for those of you who love chocolate and you see it on the list, woo-hoo-hoo, wait until you try 70 to 80% dark chocolate. Might be a little bit surprised at how sort of tart and bitter it is. For me, it was a little bit of a practice. Not that I eat a lot of chocolate, but when I do, I like to have it. And I found like the high percentage of cocoa solids in dark chocolates. It's not like eating a milk chocolate bar. So if you want to give it a try, if you want to have chocolate in your diet as a treat sometimes or whatever, or if you eat it every day and start thinking, maybe I better make a modification to the type of chocolate I eat, buy just a small piece or a small bar or whatever, in case you don't like it. There's definitely beneficial properties in dark chocolate. but don't use that as your be all end all for your wellness plan.
But it is good with red wine.
It is good. Was that Shannon?
It's good with red
Yep.
wine.
Yeah, yes, it is actually. And there are some benefits to red wine as
So
well.
pair them together.
Yeah. Not that we're saying go out and drink red wine, but for those who have no contraindications to drinking occasional red wine, there are some health properties within red wine as well that come from the grape. And next slide, please. This might be our, well, what time? So it's 10 after 9 or 10 after 9. It's 9 minutes after 3. So let's go through these healthy eating on a budget things. And I will read them out because it is an important point. So I call them the best buys. The best buys in the meat and meat alternates category. Meat alternates are basically protein sources that aren't meat based. So plain frozen fish is less expensive than fresh fish or breaded fish. Dried or canned beans and lentils, peanut butter, which is a source of protein, eggs, regular ground meat. So regular ground meat is higher in fat than the extra lean. So if you're choosing regular ground meat because you want to or need to because of your budget, just make sure that you use it and cook it in a way that you're going to really be able to drain the fat away. Canned tuna, flaked is less expensive than chunk or solid, and flaked is actually holds fewer toxins than the solid tunas. Anything that comes out of our seas nowadays have some things in them that, you know, aren't totally healthy for us in large amounts. I love my tuna, but I always choose flaked, and it's also less expensive.
Yep.
Utility grade chicken. Your chicken's not going to be walking down a runway model thing. So if it's missing a wing or missing a leg, it's still chicken, and it's a healthy choice of protein and a lot of other vitamins and minerals. Blade roasts, rump roasts, pot roast, and stewing beef are less expensive beef varieties as well. So just some tips in that category. Next slide, please. Best buys in the milk products category. Skim milk powder. Yeah, I remember actually my best friend, actually she's still one of my best friends. I met her when I was in grade 5, and I practically lived there. And her mom made milk with skim milk powder, and I wouldn't have known the difference. So and skim milk powder contains the protein and the nutrients that milk does. It's also for people who are trying to bump up their protein intake. Now, obviously it comes from a cow, so it's not a non-animal source. But for people who are looking to bump up their protein intake, they can add skim milk powder to things. It's cheaper than protein powder, and in some cases a lot more usable. You can put it into a lot of things because it's not flavored like a lot of the protein powders are. Evaporated milk, cheddar and mozzarella cheeses. This blows my mind, and I'm not seeing it as often as before. But when I was doing research for these slides on the eating on a budget, old cheese may be more expensive than mild or medium. So go figure. Plain yogurt and fluid milk. Choose store brand over name brand. Bagged milk is a better value than carton milk. Buy plain yogurt and add your own fruits, nuts, seeds, and grains to it, rather than getting, you know, fruit on the bottom and all the stuff already mixed into it. And then you can choose what you want to put into your own yogurt as well for a better price. Next slide, please. Best buys in the fruits and vegetables department. Apples, bananas, oranges, grapefruit, cabbage, potatoes, carrots, turnip, rhubarb, and plain frozen vegetables. Buy local and fresh when it's in season. Frozen vegetables and fruits are best buys out of season. And I mentioned I rely on frozen fruits and vegetables all the time. They are never not in my freezer. And I love vegetables and I eat a lot of vegetables, but I don't always have time to sit down and wash and peel and cut and all of that sort of thing. So I can just put a whole bunch of frozen vegetables into a microwave container, press 5 minutes or whatever, and then put them on top of a salad and with whatever else I'm having. Wash and cut your own produce. Expensive to buy the pre-washed and pre-cut, like holy moly. Have you seen the price of like those pre-cut up things of fruits and vegetables these days? Like, holy cow. So if you do have time to get your own produce in season when it's cheaper, and you want to have it washed and cut in the fridge ready to grab when you're feeling like a snack, it's far more budgetary to do it yourself. Cabbage is less expensive and more nutritious than lettuce, and very versatile. Next slide, please. Best buys in the grain products: whole grain rice, rolled oats, and hot cereals. You can purchase day-old whole grain breads and freeze them. I keep my bread and my bread products in the freezer all the time. So if I'm going to have peanut butter toast for breakfast with a banana maybe, I take it out and I just toast it from frozen, because then I'm not dealing with wastage all the time. Whole grain cereals are less expensive than pre-sweetened cereals, and cereals that you cook are less expensive than ready-to-eat cereals. Next slide.
I'm learning so much.
And I didn't pay Amanda to say that.
No, she didn't.
And other money saving tips: use coupons, or I guess everything's kind of on your phones now. I'm still a paper kind of gal. I'm a coupon clipper where I can. And you know, those apps too that will price match and all of that. That's, my friends tell me, like, they're lifesavers. On the other hand, not everybody can drive around the city to get the cheapest whatever, but pack your lunch and snacks. So if you work or go to school or volunteer, or people in your family do, it's far cheaper to pack your lunch and your snacks rather than buy. I always packed my own lunch when I was working at the hospital. I always purchased a very unhealthy breakfast because I didn't eat before I went home. And when I added up what my Tim Horton bagel and coffee cost me 5 days a week throughout a month, that was a game changer for me, not to mention the nutrition impact. So take foods from home when you can. Fast foods, pickup foods, foods delivered, far more expensive than nutritious foods that are purchased at the grocery store. And packing meals and snacks in reusable containers rather than Ziploc baggies is going to save you money in the Ziploc baggie department, not to mention doing good things for the environment. I think that's the last slide, Amanda.
Ooh, it is too. Oh my goodness, Chris, that was so much good information. I'm like making notes over here.
Thank you for knowing me so well, Sherry, and adding time to the presentation.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming and doing this for us. This is, oh, there was so much good information there, especially with a lot of us being chair users. That, oh, that's so good. So good. Anybody have any questions for Chris?
I
As
don't
we,
have a question, but I have a tip.
oh,
And
Love
that
it.
is
Please.
for bowel maintenance or bowel habits, is if you can lie on your left-hand side, because that's the way your bowels naturally fall. So if you're very gassy or you're just not feeling well, lie on your left-hand side.
that's an awesome
Yes,
tip.
absolutely, Michelle, for sure. And for those of us who need to insert suppositories to get our bowel care program going, the side that we lie on, as well as we're inserting our well, some of us don't insert suppositories in bed, but with this group, there's no such thing as too much information. So when I'm on the toilet and I'm inserting my suppository, I try to get it up to onto the left side of my bowel.
Yeah.
So that's a huge important comment. And nobody's ever said that, brought that up in a presentation before. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Another food tip was years ago at our locals, one of our locals theirs, they used to make subs. And on their subs, they used to do really thinly sliced cabbage as opposed to lettuce. And it was amazing, like on a roast beef sub. And it didn't go soggy, but it gave you the higher fiber and just, I don't know, it was just something that I've always remembered and will add to my foods as well.
Fabulous tip. And as I'm visualizing that on any type of a sandwich or whatever, the density would be lovely on a sandwich and much higher in fiber, hugely high in vitamin C, cabbages. So where people want to incorporate cabbage rather than lettuce, whether it's on a sandwich or salad or whatever, fabulous idea, Michelle. Thank you for sharing that.
And I have a question about, sorry.
I have two questions. Sauerkraut. Is it fermented before it's put into a jar with vinegar? So is it still the kind of sauerkraut that is going to be beneficial?
Oh, that is a great question to which I do not know the answer, Roberta. So I will be seeing Roberta because she's in one of my exercise classes. For those who don't see me on a regular basis, I will find that out and I will get the answer to Amanda and she can share it with the group.
Okay. And the other question I have is, I've wanted to try tempeh. Where do you buy it?
Yeah, I get it. So I get mine from Freshco. I don't know if you have a Freshco, but
Okay.
any of the
No, I
stores,
don't know what it is.
yeah. So any of the stores that have like a larger sort of like import section, like imported food section. So we have a large Middle Eastern community that lives around that Freshco. So they have a lot of like, the other thing they have tons of is like all different dates and figs and like different like types like that, which are also really good for your tummy. But yeah, the tempeh is it'll be in like the veggie section where they have like veggie burgers and veggie sauce.
Okay. And what is it actually?
It's a soy and then a pea product, right, Chris? I think so. Is that what's in it? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, it's good. It tastes amazing. Like I love it. Yeah, either like I said on a salad or I'll put like mustard on it. It's just like a meat alternative.
Okay, better than tofu then, because tofu,
So
really,
much.
you have to add flavor to tofu, basically.
Yeah, no, this one comes, you can buy tempeh unflavored, but I just buy the pre-flavored one. Like there's like garlic or herb or different things like that. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And I think Kelly has her hand up. Oh, sorry, Roberta, was that it or?
Nope, that's it. That's my two.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, so Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you. So I have gastroparesis and a lot of these awesome yummy foods I can't tolerate. So do you have any tips?
First question, are you followed by a dietitian, Kelly?
No.
Okay. And it was diagnosed as gastroparesis?
Like delayed gastric emptying gastroparesis.
Okay. So delayed gastric emptying might not necessarily be gastroparesis. So gastroparesis is definitely delayed gastric emptying, but can be more requiring guidance to manage. And if you live with it, you know that. The only people I've ever worked with gastroparesis are people who have had diabetes that's been uncontrolled for a long time and has ultimately resulted in gastroparesis. And sometimes people have to go more with liquid diets. But I'm hesitant to suggest anything for you because I don't know your situation. So getting any
That's fair.
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
I have actually a couple of questions in the chat here. So are pork chops red meat or white meat?
Red.
Red.
They're considered
Right.
red meat. Okay. And then if someone's unable to eat mayonnaise, but they like Miracle Whip, is there much of a difference there? Like I'm not sure. I don't remember which one I eat.
I will, and off the top of my head, I don't know the ingredients of Miracle Whip. I just use like regular mayonnaise.
Yeah.
I will look up the ingredients of both, and then
Okay.
I can weigh in when I follow up with questions I don't have answers to right now.
Awesome.
I know
Thank
that some of
you.
my vegan friends are able to eat certain types of Miracle Whip because it doesn't have egg in it. But I don't know if that's all of them. Like I know mayonnaise has egg, but there's certain Miracle Whips that don't. But yeah, we'll leave it to Chris to do the research and fill us in.
That's awesome.
And thank you, Sherry, for continuing to remind me about like the vegetarian, vegan. So yes, absolutely, all mayonnaise has eggs in it. So if for whatever reason you don't eat eggs, but the actual ingredients of Miracle Whip, I don't know. And that's cool to know that there may be at least one type of Miracle Whip that is egg free, and maybe they all are. And I don't know. So I will check that out.
That's awesome. Michelle, did you have another thing that you wanted to ask or say?
Well, the only thing I was thinking was with the tempeh, I knew it was a soya base. I have had it, and I've actually had it in place of bacon and done like BLTs. But I have an issue. That's one food that does seem to cause some allergies. So people might want to be aware of that. And I'm not normally an allergy person when it comes to food, but the tempeh does actually cause some tongue swelling and a little bit of back throat issues. So just to sort of put that out, just to let people be aware of that.
Awesome.
And I'm wondering, Michelle, if it was related to an ingredient in the flavoring as opposed to the soy pea mixture. Like, are you usually able to eat the foods that tempeh is made out of without having that reaction?
It was plain, it was unflavored tempeh because like I said, it was used, you know, as a substitute for bacon, for instance, in a BLT. And I've had it as in different salads and stuff. So I don't know. I normally stay away from eating a lot of soy just because of all the issues with, not that we have a history of breast cancer or anything else, but you know, with all the issues and controversies with soy products. But I just wanted to warn people, you know, just to be aware of that, because like I said, I've never had an issue, but that definitely causes me to have an issue.
And that's really good to know, and probably kind of a blanket reminder or a blanket point to make that if we are changing our diets or experimenting with new foods, trying new things based on our learnings, if you're incorporating something you've never ever had before, you know, heed Michelle's message and just be very careful at first.
I'm loving this conversation, but I do have another meeting I have to hop off to. But Shannon, if you want to ask your question quick and then we'll wrap up, that would be amazing.
I have one more question too, but it's really quick.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Shannon. You
Sure.
go first.
I know it's hard to describe, but what does turmeric really kind of taste like? I know it's a spice, but what kind of flavoring is that?
It's it definitely has a really unique taste. It's often in food, sort of Middle East or Eastern type foods, and it's yellow.
It's not like a curry.
I think it can be in curries, so I kind of would put it into kind of that flavor
That
category.
category, okay.
Yeah, wait, but anybody else pop in to that answer?
I don't really like curry, Shannon, and I like turmeric. So
Oh,
that
okay.
helps you. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Thanks,
And
guys.
also,
And
Sorry.
my quick question is, you get Jello a lot in the hospital. And is there any reason to eat Jello? Is it like Does the gelatin add anything to your diet?
The only thing there's no real food value to Jello, but it does contribute to hydration. So
Okay.
I might use it, you know, if I've exhausted every other option to get optimal hydration into somebody, I would incorporate Jello because it is a fluid source. But in terms of having any nutrition benefit, no.
Okay, because it's hard to find desserts that you can have when you're diabetic. And so we rely on unsweetened gel or diet Jello a fair bit. And I just wondered if maybe we don't need a lot of sweeteners, but maybe we're getting too much unnatural sweeteners, or maybe the Jello really isn't adding anything except hydration.
Well,
So
so there's no food value, but if you're using that in place of a high sugary dessert, that's a good choice. And I would say, and I know Sherry's got to go, unless you're eating massive amounts of it, the artificial sweetener in it shouldn't be problematic. I just have to say though, the artificial sweeteners can throw off our gut flora and cause problems. So we want to limit as much as we can artificial sweeteners
yeah,
in general.
I avoid them as much as I can. So yeah.
And
Okay.
where will we be able to get the PowerPoint presentation you gave?
If you guys want to email me, or I don't know how to get their email, Sherry, what would be the best?
I think everyone has my email, right? So sherry.roberts@ilwr.ca. Or we can include it. You know what? Maybe we'll include, you know what? I'll put a link in the upcoming VARP. And then if
Okay.
you want to email me, I'll just have like, if you want the information, because I'm going to include this recording on the VARP newsletter next week. And then
Okay.
on the bottom of it, I'll say, if you want access to the PowerPoint presentation, just email me, or I'll put Amanda's as well, and you can get it
Awesome.
from us.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Get
Kelly,
it.
I'm going to say one more thing before we say goodbye.
I just wanted to say this was really good presentation, and thank you so
yeah.
much, Chris, for doing it for us.
Yeah, thanks,
It's
Chris.
really
Thank you
helpful
so
and
much,
knowledgeable.
Chris.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
It was an
Have you
honor to
come
be
back?
asked to do it.
Yeah.
And
I would
thank
love
you
to
for
come
not,
back.
thank you for not saying core.
No
You
core.
work your core. It's a 4-letter
No.
word in our workout group.
That'll be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.